Today, the World Health Organization officially announced that this is a global pandemic.
In the next several days to a week or so, we're going to continue to see things go up. We cannot be discouraged by that because the mitigation is actually working.
The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, and I'm moving forward with vaccination requirements wherever I can.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Otto, and welcome to episode 9, our final episode of COVID Secrets. All of our previous episodes have been geared towards sharing the truth about how Big Pharma and the government have tried to censor effective COVID treatments and have hidden data that shows the vaccine is way more harmful than the actual virus. The truth about the real adverse effects and deaths from the vaccine, especially for pregnant women and children, and the truth about how the media has been largely manipulated, all to carry out Big Pharma's hidden agenda. But what do we do now that we know the truth about it all? If anything, our experts have expressed that this information shouldn't create fear or panic. It gives us the power to make informed decisions and to be advocates for others who don't know the truth and who are in harm's way. It emancipates us from the oppression we've experienced from the start of this pandemic. During this episode, our experts will share impactful advice on what you can do to stand up for your rights. We'll start with Dr. Richard Bartlett, who talks about what to do when you or a loved one is in hospital and are being denied the correct treatment for COVID. He goes into detail about patient rights and talks about how to stand up for these rights.
Dr. Bartlett, there's the issue of the fact that we know the hospitals aren't giving a lot of the treatments you're talking about. And this is like the horror story of when someone has their loved one in hospital and they've educated themselves. They know what you've been speaking about. And then how can they get this treatment to their loved ones, knowing that the hospitals seem to have a stance either against it or have no idea what we're talking about? What do we do?
You know, there's a pat answer that's being pushed on patients right now and their families that we're following the CDC protocol. And that is the excuse, that is the obstacle, that is the opposition to using some effective treatments like nebulized budesonide for treating the acute respiratory distress syndrome caused by COVID. So if you have a loved one that's in the hospital, what do you do to help them to decrease their chance of dying? Because just by being put in the hospital, they are at increased risk of death, if you look statistically. And so your chance of dying increases if you're put in the hospital with COVID. Your chance of dying increases even more if you're put on the ventilator. So you want to avoid those things. So if you have a loved one in the hospital, first of all, you can ask, does my loved one have acute respiratory distress syndrome? Does my loved one have ARDS? And I recommend that you record every phone conversation with every doctor and every nurse. Every time you contact the hospital, have the recording on. And if your state requires you to give notice that it's being recorded, then tell them, we're recording this conversation for quality assurance purposes. Tell them.
And you can do that in a friendly way.
You can do that in a friendly way. How many times do we hear that every time we get put on hold? This message, this phone conversation is being recorded for quality assurance purposes. Who's against quality assurance? Everybody wants high quality.
Yeah.
And so first, record every conversation. Secondly, ask very directly, does my loved one have ARDS? The answer is yes. If someone has COVID and they end up with low oxygen and that puts them in the hospital, they have acute respiratory distress syndrome. And once you have them admit that, which sometimes takes a little effort, sometimes you'll get a 3-page answer for a yes answer. And so you have to help them come full circle, and you have to ask, what's the definition of ARDS? And then they have the light bulb come on, and they finally will tell the truth that the loved one has ARDS. The reason that's important is that's late disease from COVID. That's why people are in the hospital with COVID, because it's no longer a virus that's multiplying causing the problem. Now you have the inflammation in the lungs. That's acute respiratory distress syndrome. And at the NIH database, there's studies that show that budesonide 1 milligram nebulizer treatments are effective at treating ARDS, even in late disease for patients on the ventilator in the ICU. So it's definitely effective in early disease. Oxford University proved that with the STOIC trial and the Principal trial. So that's already science settled. The science is settled. But for late disease, for ARDS, that's how you make your case and make your point that this will save lives. And we do have situations where people are off the ventilator and home with their families because they received budesonide nebulizer treatments. Something so safe, so inexpensive, so readily available, it just needs to be employed. So you can first record every conversation. Second, you get the answer recorded that your loved one has ARDS. Third, you ask for an effective treatment strategy that's been proven at the NIH database of budesonide 1 milligram nebulizer treatments. Many people are receiving that every 4 hours. Budesonide 1 milligram nebulizer treatments every 4 hours, and they're having results. People are coming home to their families. And then, if you're refused that, or if you can't get a hold of your doctor, some people have not heard from their loved one's doctor for 2 weeks, even though their loved one is hanging by a thread in harm's way, near death in the hospital. They do not get messages from the doctor, sometimes for 2 weeks. If your doctor is absent, obnoxious, belligerent, rude, you have the right to fire them. And how do you do that? You call the nurses station and you say, I'm firing the doctor. I need a new doctor immediately. And if they say you can't do that, that's not true. You have that right in the United States. And if they say, you're going to have to find another doctor, that's not true. It's the hospital's responsibility to provide a doctor for every patient in their hospital. That's their legal responsibility. And so you're not stuck with the doctor that you have. If they're not giving you the treatment that's effective, that's reasonable, if they're absent, they're rude, they're obnoxious, you can fire the doctor. You call the nurse's station and say, I'm firing that doctor, I need another doctor immediately. And another tool that you have that's patient rights is if you're not getting satisfaction in your health care for your loved one, you call the nurse's station and you demand an ethics committee consult. Ethics committee consult. And that is a responsibility of the hospital. All of a sudden the hospital knows that you know about your patient rights. All of a sudden they have the onus on them now to set up a meeting and to honor your patient rights. So we have many tools that we can use, and those are tools that will help you.
That is very powerful, and it certainly puts the power back in the hands of the patient, which is always the case because a doctor works for you. Right? You don't work for the doctor.
That's been very confused. Patient rights have been trampled over the last 2 years since January 1, 2020. It's like the American healthcare system was hijacked, but not legally. And so when you start to bring the evidence that you're in control, that there are patient rights and that you're aware of them, then there's a shift. And the loved ones that fight for their patients in the hospital many times receive their patients home alive. And if you are told no and you don't fight back, if you don't stand your ground for your loved one, you'll be planning a funeral many times instead of a homecoming to bring your loved one home.
Well, I suppose there's a reason why they call this the land of the brave. You have to be brave, right?
This is
the home of the brave.
This is the home of the brave and the land of the free. And so you have to be brave if you want freedom. And you have to stand up. And just because an authority figure says no, doesn't mean that that's so. Boy, have we seen that the person that was propped up to be the ultimate authority figure can be wrong. And Anthony Fauci said, that the general public may think that a mask will protect them, but it doesn't really work and they shouldn't use masks. He said that. And then later he said that we should wear a mask because it's a symbol that we're in it together. And with air quotes during the press conference. And then later he said everybody should wear a mask. And then he said if you receive a certain shot, you won't have to wear the mask. And then later he said if you receive that shot, you must wear a mask. And so all of those can't be true. They're mutually exclusive. And so if one of those is true, the others are not true. Some people would say that an untruth is a lie, or at least misinformation. And so when you give 6 options and 1 is true and 5 are false, that's overwhelming source of misinformation. That's just one example that sometimes an authority figure can be wrong. And so it's really important to go with the science. #science. The science is settled that early effective outpatient treatment for COVID saves lives. Monoclonal antibodies. The brand Regeneron monoclonal antibodies decreases your chance of dying or hospitalization by 81%. Great idea. Inhaled budesonide decreases your chance of being in the ER or an urgent care visit by 90%. That sounds like a great idea. How can you argue with those? But there's been tremendous pushback against this message. And there's really been one governor in the United States that has been the leader in getting this message out, and that's been Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida. And to his credit, he has been aggressively setting up Regeneron monoclonal antibody centers across the state of Texas to save his people's lives. Literally a life-saving effort that's bearing great fruit. But he's also done PSA, public service announcements. I haven't seen another state with another governor leading the way put this message out, to their shame.
Yeah, true. Wow, isn't that something? And I get so many people sitting silent, going with status quo, not willing to rock the boat, and it's really, really sad. All this unnecessary types, ways in which things are being dealt with.
In the next section of this episode, we connect with Jackson Lawmeyer, a pastor who has helped many people who have been coerced into getting the vaccine. He talks about the practical advice that people can follow to stand up for their rights and to protect their jobs and their livelihood. Then Mickey Willis, an American filmmaker and director of the documentary Plandemic, talks about how his documentaries on the plan behind the pandemic, revealing the hidden agenda behind COVID-19, has helped millions of people to see the truth. He strongly believes in sharing the truth to give people the power to stand up for their rights. He also talks about how we can make sure we stay true to our beliefs and our morals, rejecting what the media, Big Pharma, the government, and other authorities are trying to do to try to sway us away from what we know is right.
I have very, very severe autoimmune vasculitis, myositis, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto, all combination, In the beginning, they told me, oh, no, any supplement would not help you. They told me that in 2 weeks, if I would not increase dramatically amount of chemo and steroids, they should cut my legs. So I'm glad that I'm on your protocol, because I just, without this, I would be in wheelchair. And now it is practically normal. My doctor in Cleveland Clinic, a very good doctor, he just couldn't believe it. And my inflammation level was so high that they even couldn't register it.
They were going to cut off your legs?
Yes, because they told me that if I would not increase dramatically, and I increased dramatically, it was very, very high level of chemo, very high level of steroid. And then I started to decrease, and when I decrease, I have flare-up. Not anymore. With this protocol, I don't have new flare-up.
To have found this, what does it mean to you? To have been able to get your life back, what does that mean to you personally?
Oh my God, it's just, before I was practically suicidal. Now I'm very happy and, just live my whole life in different way. So thank you. I just have not enough words to tell this. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just crying.
Why are you crying?
Just emotional, just emotional. because I'm really, so grateful. It's actually also it's not my friend who actually heard you online, and she had cancer, and she followed your protocol, and she even didn't go to chemo. They told her that she will live only 3 months if she would not do chemo, but she's fine now.
Liana, why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey? So I understand that you had a COVID-19 vaccine injury.
Well, I could barely walk. My breathing was very labored. There was a lot of just a bunch of joint pain, like all over. Because I had hypothyroidism and I was already on medication for it. I spoke to my doctor about it, and then she didn't say anything else after that.
Yeah, well, the fact that she didn't comment either way sometimes is telling. Like they can't say something. There's good people that's kind of their response, where they're good people. They're not trying to lie to you and pacify you, but they just are silent and they're just at war in themselves.
Right. I was afraid because I didn't want to die, and I felt like my body felt like it was shutting down. I was in a master class with Dr. Hanale, and he put me on a regimen. And so I fasted for 3 days, and then we did the regimen again. And I must have done that for about I would say I did that for maybe 8 weeks. After that, I started feeling better. I started having the energy to get up and exercise again and do the things that I needed to do.
What would be your message to somebody else that's injured right now from the COVID-19 vaccine? What would you say to them right now?
First of all, you have to forgive yourself for taking the vaccine. You trusted people, and they believe that they're doing the right thing. Knowing that there is a God in the universe that loves you, that cares about you, right? And that knows that healing can happen. But if you don't believe it, then your body won't believe it either. So you really have to know that there is healing. You can heal. You can heal.
Hi, it's Jonathan, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming with me on this journey. This is the final episode, and it's been such an honor to take you through all of this knowledge, all of this information. And I know that you came here for a reason. You wanted knowledge about what's going on with COVID and the vaccine, and you wanted answers. And as we've gone through this journey, I think that we can all agree that you've been given so much more than that. And that was the intention. I put my heart and soul into this. My team put their heart and soul into this. We worked through the night, some nights. We painstakingly put these things together because we knew that it would make a difference for people and that it would save lives. And that's what brings me and the team, the amazing team that's behind me, fulfillment. Of course, these doctors, the experts that you've spoken with have painstakingly done their work. I think of people like Dr. Henry Ely that worked for 2 years on his grand jury petition that was just recently submitted. And I was privileged to walk to the courthouse with him and watch those documents get filed. And it's the only one of its kind. No one else has done that, the grand jury petition. And watching the energy and the effort that he put into this, seeing the doctors and the protocols that they've developed, whether it was Dr. Peter McCullough or Dr. Pierre Corey, with the protocols that they had used, Dr. Ben Marble, who had then applied those protocols to himself over 15,000 patients, all the hard work that has gone into this, the energy, can you feel it, of people that truly cared, that have sowed seeds deep into the ground, and the growth, the harvest that is here for you and myself is profound. So now, as we close this series and we consider all the things that we've learned, all the breakthroughs, all the understandings, I want to take a moment with you to encourage you to come with us on the next step of this journey, to change your life, to watch your health transform. As you've seen this is so much more than knowledge about a specific vaccine, because when you think about it, to focus on what the enemy, let's say, of our health, or the tyrants or the authorities, like however you see this, to focus on their plan is really to distract you from your plan and your purpose, and you living your life by design and having the health that you deserve and that you long for. And so my focus, as you've gone through this series, has been on the solutions. And when you've watched this, when you've learned from our experts, you've seen solutions, life-changing solutions that are here for you to help you. And when it comes to health, some of the case studies that I've shared with you just recently, like Liana, or people like Natalia, or even a case study that I'll share with you, Gail Gass, who at 69 years old finally found the solution to a health struggle that she'd had since 8 years old, when her mother noticed how unhealthy and sickly that she was, and that she dragged all through life up until the ripe age of 69 years old. Now, getting the joy and vigor that she'd been looking for. It's like sad, really sad, and at the same time it's so beautiful that with a woman like this and the things that she shared with me, that she's going to use that story of what has happened to her to help other people, and that there's a meaning for this, there's a reason behind this. So I mean, this is somebody that was getting tested for dementia because she couldn't remember the things that she was saying. She'd get midway through a sentence and then not know what she was talking about. Her friends would have to kind of ask her, what were you talking about? She'd say, I have no idea, there's something going wrong with me. She had 4 autoimmune conditions, and her body was breaking down, and her marriage was struggling, all of that. And so seeing the turnaround that she had was just super touching for me, really inspiring. And so with Gail, with Liana, with Natalia, with countless other people, thousands of people, I want to remind you that all things are possible when you tap into your health, when you decide to take control of your health, when you decide to invest in yourself and put your energy into things that work, that are proven to work. And that is exactly what we have inside of this program. That's why I'm so excited about it. And as I've been explaining to you, this is not just only about COVID, even though it's about COVID. It's about the vaccines. It's about what you can do. It's about how you can advocate for your rights. It's about how you can stand up. It's about how you can protect your livelihood and your career. It's about how you can use religious exemptions. It's about how you can stand up in your local area. But this is about you reclaiming your entire life, reclaiming your health, being able to stand strong and say, this is what I am going to do. I'm going to be in control of my destiny, of my life. I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm not going to accept poor health in my life. I'm going to do what it takes for myself, for my loved ones, for my spouse, for my children, for my grandchildren. And I will not give up, and I will stand strong, and I will stand victorious. Knowledge and truth is key. It's critical. You cannot do the things that you want to do without knowledge and truth. Guidance is so important. Mentorship, hearing from experts, knowing what to do, and the belief that comes with seeing other case studies, seeing the proof that this is verifiable. This is not something that's just based on a whimsical hope. You have seen people that have put their medical licenses on the line to protect the health of humanity, to protect your health. And as you go through our program, when you say yes and take advantage of the opportunities we have, of all the gifts that we have available, you'll come with us on a journey learning from the wisdom of these experts in ways that you could never have imagined. You'll learn how to harness the natural health of your body, how to reverse disease in your body, how to turn off these mechanisms, how to get toxins out of your body that are causing the poor health that you or a loved one may be experiencing. And remember, this is not just for you, it's for all those that are in your circle of influence. Have a look at what happened in my family. Have a look at the fact that it was me first that researched into health. As an investigative journalist, I turned my attention into health, knowing that this was the area by which my life would be made or broken on this health question, and that would matter to me and anyone I care about. When I married my wife, I had no idea that her health would completely fall apart, and I had no idea the magnitude to the extent of which she was suffering with her health. And I loved her, I love her. So to be able to know the things that helped her, like she would go to sleep crying at night and with pain all over her body. And I felt like, what am I supposed to do about this? And then my first reactions were to say that you don't have a condition, or you have some conditions, but the things that you're experiencing don't really make a lot of sense to me. So I don't even know whether this is really something that is that big a deal, and whether you're just maybe complaining because you naturally like that. And this is just the most terrible thing to think, or even allude to or say at times. And these were the things that my wife went through, just to feel like empty and to be bankrupted in her health. And so when I came to understand the knowledge and the truth that helped set her free and helped heal her body and helped her have the happiness that she was looking for, being someone that struggled with depression, anxiety, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic pain, brain fog, and so many other symptoms, chronic fatigue syndrome. She had these conditions, and this made her suffer so much. I watched her father suffer with his health, with his kidney health, with the fact that he was at an 8% kidney function. And we made it as such through the protocols that we learned from the experts that you'll learn from in all the free gifts that we're giving, meant that he never had to go on dialysis. And that was something that we thought, there's no way at 8%, you're supposed to be on dialysis if your kidneys are 15%. And he had his kidney function at 8% and he never went on dialysis. These were breakthroughs. Look at my wife's sister who had lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. She had lupus for over a decade, and she'd had rheumatoid arthritis since the age of 9 years old. She had the highest stage of lupus that you could have if you were to rank it in stages based on her markers. She was the most critical type of case for lupus. And within 4 weeks, her blood work showed that she was in remission for both, meaning that she completely had no markers to indicate that she even had lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. And we show this case study inside of the free gifts, inside of the answer to autoimmune disease, the free gift that's worth $497, with Dr. Brooke Goldner sharing the protocols that she did, that she taught, and that she used to reverse her lupus, and that she uses for all her autoimmune patients. Thousands of people that have reversed their conditions. And my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, Erin, who's another proof that this is true. And I mean, my jaw dropped to the floor, my eyes opened when I saw the result that she achieved. And that knowledge is here for you. We've been focusing on COVID because this is what this series is about, and even people reversing COVID vaccine injury. But some of the things that I know that are going to help you so much is reversing autoimmune disease. Even if you don't have a diagnosed condition, you need to do the protocols that she did, because it clears infections out of the body. It clears toxins out of the body. Everyone has toxins, environmental toxins, heavy metals, parasites. Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt says if you want to find out whether you have parasites, just put your fingers up on your throat and see if you can find a pulse. If you can find a pulse, then you've got parasites. It's a funny analogy, but he's inferring the fact that because you're a living organism and you're in an environment that's filled with parasites, and you've been a part of the genetic modification experiment that has destroyed gut bacteria, we've been left wide open because our major defense against parasites is our gut flora, the microbiome. And so we have become overburdened by parasites. My wife was one of those examples. After she did a parasite cleanse, her life completely changed. After she got heavy metal toxins out of her body, her life completely changed. And she learned that from the knowledge that we're sharing inside of this series. She turned around her depression and anxiety. She's no longer on medication. She hasn't taken those medications for over 5 or 6 years. It's amazing to see the things that happen when you're willing to do what it takes. And they're simple things, they're easy things, they're cost-effective things. Most of the things cost nothing at all. It's just about changing your choices. And you then are able to enjoy life more because you have the energy and the joy and the passion for life. And you're also able to take advantage of enjoying the most amazing health. So I'm going to break down for a moment the amazing gifts that you get when you say yes to COVID Secrets. You'll get the answer to autoimmune disease valued at $497 completely free. You'll get that with any package that you order today. You'll get the brain healing breakthrough with the gold package, and that's valued at $497. And you'll get Heal, vaccine injury recovery and immune protocol, which is valued at $597. You'll get it completely free inside of the gold package. All the other amazing gifts, the 60 full-length interviews. We've just added 10 full-length interviews to your program. Don't miss out on those, they're fantastic. The audios, the transcripts, the books printed out, delivered to your door, the DVDs, the 9 episodes, the 9 bonus episodes, episode 10, 11, and 12. It just keeps going. The 16 special reports that have not been released before, that you have not seen, with our amazing experts, all detailed exactly what you get inside of these great reports. And all you have to do is just simply place your order before this episode expires. This is the final episode. I don't want you to miss out on this. That would make me very sad to have to, my team then responding and letting you know that we've closed down the program, and we want to honor those that have said yes to this and that have taken the time to invest in themselves. And we gave these all free because we care about your outcome. For me, we could have charged and invited you to pay the $1,591 for these 3 free gifts, but we want to give it to all to you for free by clicking the button here on this page, and you'll be able to get started right away. It's that simple. You'll get the program, you'll secure your place, and you're fully covered by a 60-day money-back guarantee with no questions asked. So I can't wait to see you inside this program. I know what kind of difference it will make for you. Gail, Natalia, Liana, my wife Lori, my sister-in-law Erin, all use these protocols to achieve abundance in their health. My father-in-law as well. They're just a few examples of the thousands of people that have had their lives changed by this information. I don't want you to miss out. I know how life-changing this is. I know the joy that I experienced in my life. My wife, I doubt whether she would have been able to have children in the health that she was in. We were planning not to have children because she suffered so much as it was. We felt like, well, we can't possibly add to this burden. She'll just want to give up. It's too much. How could she suffer that much? So that took away that dream for us for that period of time until we learned how to reverse that condition. It was so simple, and we're detailing all of these things step by step so you can go through it. And not only that is, when you place your order today, you'll get the ability to participate for free in question and answer sessions with the experts. Many of these doctors charge anywhere between $300 to $800 an hour for their time because they're kind of the world famous doctors that everyone flies around the world. Celebrities go to see them, all that kind of thing. And so for me, I often felt like, I don't really believe that health should be something that only the wealthy can afford. I believe that everyone should be able to harness health. That's due to my humanitarian background as well. The fact that, to me, food security, the ability to live life without famine and poverty should be a privileged and opportunity that everyone gets to have in life, and same with health. So we've got that as a free gift for you. You get to ask your questions. You get to learn from all the questions that other people ask that are things that you maybe should be asking but you didn't know that you should, and you learn and you apply those things. It's completely life-changing. Come with us on this journey. Join the program. It's closing down right now. This is episode 9. You may have just a matter of hours or minutes. I don't know where exactly the timer is while you're watching this, but I know that if you're watching this right now, you've got in just in time. So place your order today. Come with us on this journey. Change your life. I can't wait to see the results that come into your life, and I'm excited about it. I believe in you, and I know that you can do this. Believe in yourself. Use the tools that are here for you to change your life, and know that you're worth it. You deserve it. You deserve the best. And use our program to help you achieve the best health, the abundance of health that you deserve, to change your life and have the joy and passion and vigor for life that you deserve. And all you have to do is place your order here on this page. Remember, in the gold package, you're getting over $2,500 worth of free gifts when you place your order today. Amid all the other amazing gifts, the 60 full-length interviews. We've just added 10 full-length interviews to your program. Don't miss out on those. They're fantastic. The audios, the transcripts, the books printed out, delivered to your door, the DVDs, the 9 episodes, the 9 bonus episodes, episode 10, 11, and 12. It just keeps going. The 16 special reports that have not been released before, that you have not seen, with our amazing experts, all detailed exactly what you get inside of these great reports. But only if you place your order today. If you wait till later, all of these bonuses will no longer be included. They're taken down at the end of this episode. So I can't wait to see you inside of the program. Say yes today and join us inside of this amazing program by simply clicking the buttons or the banners below the images here on this page, and I'll see you inside of our amazing program. Thank you so much. Jackson Lohmeyer, I am really appreciative of you taking time to interview with me today, because I believe that you have so much practical information for people that are in situations where they're being coerced and bullied to keep their jobs. People are completely stressed out and overwhelmed because they have a duty to take care of themselves and others, to provide for themselves and their families, and yet they're being told to take these experimental injections. And so I appreciate so much that you have been somebody that has seen what people are going through and cared enough to do something about that, even though that could have some ramifications for you.
Oh yeah, well, it's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much for having me. And what an interesting time that we're living in the sense of, who would have thought that we'd be in a position with vaccine mandates, in the sense of, if you don't take it, you lose your job. It's unbelievable. And here in the United States, that's not a part of our DNA. Back in September, former Vice President Joe Biden, he declared war on the American people. Now, a lot of people get upset with me, especially the rhinos, the Republicans in name only. They get so mad, they say, quit calling him former Vice President Joe Biden. They always say, you need to call him president. He's not the stolen elections don't equate to legitimate presidencies. And so what we have here is a direct result of a stolen election in the vaccine mandates that we're seeing all across the board in every single state. And some states are fighting back, some states are not. Some people are fighting back, some people are not. But one of the things that we did was, when we saw that take place, I got to thinking, we got to be able to help people. People have got to have help, because they're being put in a position they should never be put in. No American should be pressured, coerced, or forced to take an experimental RNA modifying, nanotechnology, graphene oxide filled experimental vaccine. No American should be put in that position. So we said, we'll offer religious exemptions. And I tell you what, in 2 months, I've signed personally over 50,000 COVID-19 religious exemptions. Thousands of them have been accepted, and so many people have been able to keep their jobs through this whole thing. So the message is, if we comply, we'll die as a country. This is not about being pro-vax or anti-vax. That is not the fight. This is, are you pro-freedom or are you anti-freedom? And we're pro-freedom, and so we want to make sure that people are in a position they get to make their own decisions. And so religious exemptions, they work. We've been doing it for 2 months now, and thousands of people have kept their jobs because of it.
Fantastic. Jackson, why don't you share a little bit about your background? What's your role in government and politics?
Yeah. Well, I pastor a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Sheridan Church is a beautiful, great church. I am a small business owner with my wife, Kendra. We got 5 kids. You go to my website, jacksonlohmeyer.com. You can see my kids. They're real kids, by the way. They're not Photoshopped. They're not hired actors. They're real kids. They're beautiful. I'm so proud of them. And 7 months ago, I made the big decision that would change the trajectory of my life and my family's life, that I'm going to run for the United States Senate in the state of Oklahoma. General Flynn called me, said, you're going to run and you're going to win. And I said, yes, sir. And so got in this fight, running for the U.S. Senate, because I think it's very important that Christians get involved in our government. The reason our government has gone off the rails is because so many Christians have advocated, they have just pulled back from that, and especially pastors. They talk about separation of church and state. You hear it all the time. Church and state, keep them separated. And that's not the reality of what this country was built upon. Pastors help lead the charge to give birth to this country. And this is a Christian country, and we have to remember that. We have to remember our past so we understand where we're going in our future. So I'm getting in the fight. I've been involved before running for office, but now, really getting after it and having the time of my life doing it.
Wow. And because you're a pastor, that's how you're able to give the exemptions, is that right?
Yeah, I sign these exemptions, and a lot of pastors do. A lot of pastors are signing exemptions. Unfortunately, more pastors are not. Like, they refuse to do it. That's why I've signed so many, is because people will go to their pastor and they'll say, hey, will you sign my religious exemption? And their pastor, for either a lack of courage or a lack of integrity, will not do it. And so they'll come and I'll sign them. That's why, like I said, I've signed over 50,000 Thousands of people have been able to keep their jobs, and that is the amazing thing in this. If we will fight, we'll win. If we comply, we die. But if we'll fight, we'll win. And that's the message. We got to fight, fight, fight.
Wow. And so I want you to tell me about how you did these exemptions, because that's probably this pastor's probably listening right now, and they're thinking, well, yeah, I actually do want to fight the fight, and I want to give a good exemption. What do they say and not say? Because there's do's and don'ts. There's certain things that we should avoid. What did you put in yours, and why did they end up being effective for the thousands of people that have written
So
back
we have
to
an
you?
airtight reason of why this individual should be exempt. So a religious exemption is a sincerely held belief of the individual. It's a sincerely held belief of the individual. And when we're talking about these particular vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccines, that are really no vaccines at all, it's not a vaccine. And so what we do is they can go to my website, jacksonlawmeyer.com, and they can download the exemption for free. It's totally free. You can download it, and on there it's got everything laid out. I mean, everything is laid out beautifully. We go with the scriptures of our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. We talk about how life is valuable. Jeremiah 1:5, before before we were born, God formed us in our mother's womb and He knew us. And so we lay out the framework for it, and then we talk about what is inside the COVID-19 vaccines. We talk about what are the ingredients, such as SM-102, graphene oxide being derived from aborted fetal tissue. We lay out all the ingredients that are public knowledge. It's not like we're coming up with things. It's all public knowledge.
What did you say was derived from aborted fetal tissue?
It's derived from, many of the ingredients are derived from aborted fetal cell tissue, such as SM-102. SM-102. It's common knowledge. You can go look it up. So we lay everything out. We lay it all out there, and then we also have links and sources. I mean, it's airtight. It's airtight. It's not something you're going to want to get in an argument with. And so we formulated it very well with legal help, pastoral help, with medical help, and it's all come together. And when you submit these exemptions, I'm telling you, your employer, they don't want to fight that because it's airtight. That's why we've had such great success with these religious exemptions.
Thank you for sharing that. And so maybe you could explain the concept of religious liberty and why that's important. Because it's interesting, because you talked about your role in politics, and I think that one thing that people understand is that a good leader of the world and of a country is somebody that is advocating for the civil and religious freedoms of their individuals, and that obviously certain values, like when it comes to people would then claim, for example, abortion would be under that freedom, but perhaps it's because they don't necessarily really understand what religious liberty or freedom is actually about. So maybe you could explain that, and then why that is a core argument, the religious liberty, because sometimes when people try to hedge it purely in the medical side, it's just like, well, this is proven safe and effective. But the religious views of the people, our freedom of speech or freedom of thought, which was really the battle that was fought actually back in the 1500s under Luther, which was the liberty of conscience, which is very much what we're referring to. So what would you like to say on that subject?
Well, there's this constant battle for freedom, and the Christian faith is all about freedom. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. It's being set free from the bondages of sin to live a life in victory in Christ. The Christian faith is about freedom, which is why this nation was birthed on the premise of freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of you just list it through. Freedom, freedom, freedom. But freedom is not something that is a natural instinct of people. People are so inclined to be more of sheep. That's just sort of the way people are. And so you have to fight for freedom. It's a counterintuitive thing in a lot of people. But when it comes to the United States of America, this country was founded as a Christian country. We have 250 founding fathers, about 250. 95% of them were devout Christians. 95% of the 250 founding fathers. 5% of them, they were not devout Christians, but 95% were. And what we only talk about is the 5% who were not devout Christians. We'll mention Thomas Jefferson. Oh, they love Thomas Jefferson. Or they'll talk about Ben Franklin. It's true, Ben Franklin was not a devout devout Christian. But Ben Franklin did want the Bible to be taught in every single public school in America. Thomas Jefferson was not a devout Christian, but when he was president of the United States, it's the year 1800, the U.S. Capitol building is completed. And Thomas Jefferson, as president, he allows a church to be planted in the new United States Capitol building. Jefferson attends that church every Sunday. Now remember, he's one of the 5% non-religious of the 95% very devout Christians. But Jefferson attends church every Sunday at the Capitol. He doesn't like the worship music. So what he does as President of the United States is he brings in the U.S. military band to lead worship every single Sunday. Now this is the guy that wrote separation of church and state. Now that phrase, separation of church and state, is nowhere in our founding documents. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. That phrase, separation of church and state, is in a letter from Jefferson to a friend. It'd be like if I sent you a text message. It's in a letter from Jefferson to a friend. When Jefferson was president, he used taxpayer funds to fund Christian missionaries to the Native Americans. So this is the guy that wrote Separation of Church and State. What was he talking about? Was he talking about the church staying out of the affairs of the state? No, not at all. What he was talking about was the state staying out of the affairs of the church, that there would not be a state religion, which is what they came from in Europe, where if you were in Germany, you were a Lutheran. If you were from Italy, you were a Catholic. If you were from England, you were Anglican. Well, in the United States of America, that wasn't the way that we were going to conduct business. In the United States, you would have freedom of religion, freedom of choice, and the government would not interfere in that. Well, what we've come to now is this phrase, well, we want freedom from religion. From, not of. You change the term there. And you hear the left talk about we want freedom from, we don't want religion in the midst. So this is a religious country. This is a country that was birthed on the Christian faith. So we have to realize the reason America loves freedom is because the United States of America is a Christian country which has an inherent value system which is all about freedom. And so if we don't continue to fight for these things, we're going to lose them. I mean, we are losing them. Think about it. We've lost medical freedom in less than a year. In less than a year, we've reached the place that if you don't take the jab, you're going to lose your job. Who would have thought this before 2020? It wasn't even in the forefront. And it goes back to, I see it as the mask mandate. When the mask mandates came down, there was kind of two camps of those who were against it. Those who were adamantly, we got to fight the mask mandate like it's nobody's business. And those who were like, I'm against the mask mandate, but I don't think it's going to last. Well, if we would have fought harder on the mask mandate and didn't comply with the mask mandates when they were around last year in the lockdowns, we wouldn't be where we are today with a vaccine mandate. But because we complied then, now we have a new mandate. And if we comply with this mandate, you can take it to the bank. There will be other mandates that follow that are even more severe. That is why we have to draw a line in the sand and say this is a hill worth dying on. It's not because we're anti-vaxxers or pro-vaxxers. It's because we are pro-freedom. We're pro-freedom, and we have to fight for the rights of individuals because our rights don't come from the government. Our rights are granted to us from Almighty God. It's the government's responsibility to defend those rights, not to invade those rights.
Yeah, Pastor Loma, I appreciate what you're saying. I think that it's very interesting that you're anchoring here on the role of people such as yourself, pastors, speaking up. Because I think a lot of people feel like that is not their role and they're just there to teach the Bible. Yeah. Very interesting concept for people to think about.
Well, you have to be engaged. You have to talk about what's going on in the world that you live in. If you read the Bible is in the now. Every single story is about what's happening right then, and everything always involves some form of government. If you just go story after, it's kings and princes and nations. What we've tried to do is draw ourselves into a church of four walls. This is where the church is. The church is not meant to stay within four walls. The church is involved in every aspect of life. And because we have abandoned our role in civil government, look at where the United States government is right now. It's unbelievable. We have a stolen election. You have vaccine mandates. You're on the verge of hyperinflation. We're losing this war across the board. And the reason we're losing the war is because pastors And Christians have been so passive. They've been so passive. We have to engage. We have to fight. And a lot of times when we hear that word fight, we're like, I don't want to fight. Well, you have to fight. You have to fight. There are times when you are supposed to be like a lamb. Jesus was the Lamb of God. But there are also times when you have to be like a lion. Jesus is also the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and He's coming back as a lion. And so we have to realize when those times are to be more lamb-like and when those times are to be more lion-like. This is a time for lions. We are under attack, and we have to fight. And we fight very simply with what I call the 3 T's. The first T is we fight with our time. We have to invest our time because in the United States, you can do 1,000,001 things. There's a lot of good things to do. C.S. Lewis put it like this: the enemy will come and distract you with a good book to keep you from reading the great book. So in the United States, you can do a lot of good things. A lot of good things are happening. But there's a greater thing that's happening right now that we have to be a part of, and that's saving this country. It takes time. So we got to invest our time. Secondly, we've got to invest our talents. God has gifted each person with unique abilities, skill sets, and talents. And when we take our talents and we come together, all of a sudden we become an unstoppable force. We're stronger together than we are apart. So time, talent, but number 3 is so important, and that's our treasure. If we vote right every 2 years, and we vote right every 4 years, but we spend our money wrong every single day, we're just spinning our wheels. In other words, we have to stop funding deep state companies that hate this country, and we got to start funding America First companies that love this country. Every dollar we spend is a bullet in this war. We are at war. We have to recognize our ammunition comes in the form of dollars. And so time, talent, treasure, if we'll use those 3 T's to fight, we're going to win this war. But if we don't fight, we've already lost. And so that's the message. That's where we're at in this point in history.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Mickey. I have really enjoyed your work from afar, and to get to spend some time in person and to be able to sit down with you and ask you for all your wisdom from the work you've been doing over the years is certainly an honor for me. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Really, it's my honor.
Thank you. So, Mickey, I think let's start with the practical. Well, let's go back a second, because what you guys did with Plandemic was nothing short of miraculous, in my opinion, and it was exactly at the right time. It was a godsend. I would attribute that film with saving millions of lives. And I think we'll see that unfold when people have the education to make the right choices. You were there doing the research, getting the right people. Years before, I'd done interviews with Judy Mikovits. Mikovits goes back. We interviewed with her, I did 5 years ago. And so, for me, seeing that, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. So I was celebrating, like, this is, you got that very main stage. And when I interviewed her recently, she said it was just God's gift, for that to happen, and you were a part of that. And so you were the visionary behind it. So tell me a bit about that for a moment and the impact of that film.
Well, we released Plandemic 1 in May 4th of 2020. And this was right in the middle of another film that I was directing called The Narrative. And The Narrative was filled with whistleblowers from all the major agencies, including big tech. And I had met Judy during the production of The Narrative, and with the intention that I might produce a movie based upon her book. And I had to turn it down because I was in the middle of something, I was committed to this other documentary. But all the whistleblowers within this documentary kept telling me that any day now, America is going to see a massive false flag attack of some sort to divert the world's attention. And they based this upon a lot of the legalities that were being exposed, a lot of the pedophile rings that were being unearthed, the arrests that were happening, a lot of the kingpins that were going down, and that were considered up until that point to be untouchable. And it was interesting to me that I was at the intersection of these very intelligent, educated whistleblowers that have access to fairly sensitive information, and they were all saying the same thing. And so when the pandemic was announced, I reached out and I said, could this be it? And all of them said, absolutely, of course, this is it. This is what we knew was coming. And so I reached out to Judy, and I had already had a couple of meetings with her, and as the smartest scientist that I knew at the time, I reached out to her to say, what's your thought on this? And we had a little in-person meeting, and in the middle of the meeting I said, let's stop, because I think what you're saying is worthy of the world knowing this. And so let's go to my studio and film this conversation. And that's how Plandemic began. And while I knew that because of we've had a lot of luck, I guess you can say, or maybe some of it's strategic, but a lot of viral videos out in the world. And so I always ask myself the question, what does the world want to hear and say in this moment? And if you nail those two questions, what do they want to hear most, and what do they need to say most? And I knew that this would be something that would go viral, because at that point, when everyone was, either just had the knee-jerk reaction of terror, or they were also very suspicious already of our government. That, is this real? What's happening? Something feels weird. And that's one of the most common acknowledgments that I've received from people, is that the film helped to solidify their suspicions. That they were from the very beginning suspicious of what was being announced, and that when we released the film, they said, I knew something. I knew there was more to the story. This feels true to me. But we could never have predicted what Plandemic ended up doing, having been seen well over 1 billion people at this point. And I'm just glad that it did, because it definitely started a global conversation that needed to happen, that now is, then it was kind of invisible to see, but I think now if you don't see it, your eyes are closed.
Wow. And that was exactly the right time for that to happen. I think we're so fortunate that you guys had that conversation. I think, man, I just think about how providential that was, because the timing is so critical with this, because, after when someone has an injury and they're saying, if only I had have known. And so the timing is critical, and I appreciate how much you decided to get that out much quicker. And I'm sure you're breaking the filmmaker's bones in your body by having to do that. It's like, no, we need to wait till it's perfect. And it was it was wonderfully produced, but the fact that you're able to push it out quickly was critical for the world. Mickey, let's talk about, so you've curated some amazing content. You're an expert in this field, in that you're an investigative reporter on these types of issues, and a filmmaker, a producer of content, and just astute with your research. What are the things that you believe that people can do right now to advocate for themselves, to be able to make the right choices? How do people hold their ground? How do people educate themselves? What are some of the practical takeaways that you've had from all this information you've poured through?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the paramount things that we all need to do right now, particularly those who have yet to fully embrace what's happening, or if they're onto it to whatever degree, they haven't spoken out about it yet, is one of the things we have to realize is that we've had decades and trillions of dollars pushed at us in a gradual, incremental process that have literally created a mass hypnosis on our people. And so the first thing is to recognize that, and to ask yourself the question. The first time I asked myself this question, I think it was about 2012, and I was in a meditation, and I just kind of had this awakening that was taking place, and I asked myself the question, am I hypnotized? Because something started to tell me inside, like, this is what you believe has very little to do with reality of what's going on. You've been indoctrinated somewhere. And I could start to see how out of harmony my own behavior belief system was with the reality that I was just becoming open to. And so the first thing we have to do is to really consider that those who are hypnotized rarely ever know they're hypnotized. And they'll swear that they're not, and that's the hypnotic spell. And so the first thing we have to do is say, is it possible that I'm part of this mass hypnosis, that I've been affected by it? And then really start to do the work to unlearn all that stuff that we've learned. And I'll give you an example of that. If people understood that literally everything that's placed before them, as they're driving, every billboard, everything that's on the radio, at home, everything that's on television, every magazine, every newspaper. There's stuff planted in all of it that changes our behavior and our belief systems. And sometimes it's just to force us to become consumers. A lot of time it's just very tricky and very intelligent ad agencies that know how to manipulate people psychologically to get them to take action to buy their product. And that also coincides with another mind control program, which is to get people to literally be enslaved cognitively, so that whenever the media or our military complex suggests that it's time to go to war, we suddenly drop all of our morals and we say, yes, let's go to war. If we're scared enough, we'll agree to all of that. And so one of the first things to do is for us to be humble enough to consider that some of that has affected us. And to understand that I remember in 2008, I was at the time studying user interface. I was developing some technology companies. And for the first time, I had never gone down this rabbit hole, but I was studying the psychology that goes into what they call user experience. And that is, when you look at a web page, there's a lot of thought that goes into where a button goes, how big it is, what color it is, what it says, what happens when you click it, how many clicks it takes you to get to the page they want you to get to, how to keep you on certain pages without technically taking you to another landscape. There's all kinds of science that goes into this. And I was amazed in 2008-ish when Facebook changed their button from whatever it was, I don't even remember at this point, to a like button. And it kind of blew my mind because I thought, wow, everything I'm studying, and that sounds like a really bad brand. Because now we're going from whatever it was, I'm connected with you, to I like you. And I remember thinking it felt weird to me that I'm now striving for people to like me.
Oh, yeah.
It just kind of turned, to where it wasn't just collecting a tribe or connecting with friends, or it was now you have to do things to earn your like.
Wow.
And what that did psychologically to us on a mass scale, it got us addicted to being liked. And that's one of the first major things that we have to get over. What I realized when Plandemic came out was how much that was in my system, because I suddenly went from being a nice guy that almost everyone could get along with to seeing half the world doesn't like me now. And it really was like, it almost made me want to stop. And I went, oh, that's why they do it.
Wow.
And then I started realizing all the times I spent going, oh, my videos got 250,000 likes. And I'm looking at all these YouTubers and people online, all striving for how many likes they get.
Wow. It's interesting, Mickey. I was thinking there's this Bible verse that says, Jesus said it, where he says, woe unto you when all men shall speak well of you. Isn't that interesting?
It is very interesting.
It's a huge problem.
It's a huge problem.
When all speak well of you, because it shows that, because there's never really been any societies that have been intolerant towards goodness and truth. There's always been that force. It's always around us. It's never not been with us historically. So how should we expect all people to like us if you're standing up speaking against evil? And it's the reason why the difference between what you do is actually healing and it's good, but the reception of it then can be destructive, but that's on their part. And so you watch that unfold.
And it's when you understand the difference between tribalism and community, there's a major difference there. It's kind of like the difference between natural and normal. Most of us are keyed into living normally, but not naturally. And tribalism versus community, a true community is a community that loves you because you're human. And because we understand that we're part of an organism, and so we take care of each other. Tribalism, modern tribalism, is about ideology. So we connect on the ideological level. So now you have to agree with me or you're out. And so all of that is set up by design so that it keeps us in line. So I go, okay, if I want my likes and I don't want to see my likes going down, then I have to agree with whatever everyone else on Facebook is saying. And stepping outside of that, and I remember the first time that not the first time, but one time that shocked me was I just, right in the height of, the slander against Donald Trump, I was on the fence because I thought I'm not going to vote for somebody just because they're part of a political party. What's this man going to actually achieve? He's made a lot of promises. Let me watch him. And then he did prison reform. And I reached out on Facebook and I said, is this like no one's talking about this. This is one of the most racist things that America has done in modern times. And it was something that Obama promised to do for 8 years. And now Trump just did it. It's prison reform. And this is a law that, disproportionately imprisoned men of color, brown and black men. And I said, can we not celebrate this one move that Donald Trump made?
Wow.
And they attacked me.
Yeah, wow.
And all these people who say they care about Black Lives Matter and all these different organizations, but I said, can we just celebrate that he did it? Like it's you can hate him, you can feel however you want to feel, but can we celebrate these milestones?
Principles.
And people were like, you're giving him a voice, and you're empowering a white supremacist, and they just actually went after me hard. And I thought, that's tribalism.
Yeah, wow.
It has nothing to do with truth. It's just I stepped outside of the parameters of what I'm allowed to say now with my tribe, and that's when I went, I don't want anything to do with this tribe anymore.
Wow.
I'm done.
So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that you're able to give people when we're talking about this subject is that the confidence and the power and the self-love, purpose, identity that it takes. Perhaps people understand that as receiving love from God. Whatever it is that allows people to have an identity separate from the tribe and what people think, so that you play to the right audience and you live a life that's on purpose. You look back at your life and you're happy and proud of what you've done versus that you feel like you compromised and you did something that wasn't really who you were. And I think that your choice to make that transition and or to be more bold is one that everyone can learn from. Any tips or tools or practical steps that you think people could just take to do the right thing for themselves during these times? Is it, what would be your points there perhaps in regard to the vaccines and masks, how they're being muzzled or censored from their voice, how they fit in with their friends and family? I'll let you go where you think you should go with that question.
Right now, what's paramount is unity. And so a lot of people have taken a stance and have allowed this agenda to divide their loved ones.
Yeah.
And I think it's incredibly critical in this moment that we understand that unity is number one. And that we need to understand that all the shaming people and at this point, because we're 2 years now from the start of this situation, and if your family hasn't by now, and they can't look around to actually see that there's something else really nefarious that's taking place, then the chances are they're not going to see it until they actually directly experience it. There's some people that have to have a direct experience, and no words, no education, no links, no proof will do it for them. And then so I recommend for people to then now take it upon themselves. People have been working really hard to, as they say, red pill their loved ones. But at this point, let's move into the stage of acceptance. My father is potentially going to get his third vaccine. I've told him everything he needs to know. I've shown him everything that I can possibly show him. He knows who his son is. And he's making a choice as a grown man in his 80s to get the vaccine. And this may mean the end of his life. He already has heart condition. And I've come to terms with that. We all have our own path. And what I don't want it to create is the last stage of his life that we're at odds because he didn't listen to me. So I don't want to stand in that righteousness. I've already told him I love him. I don't want anything to happen to him. I want the best for him. And here is, in the best possible way that I could articulate it, here is what I know to be true, and here are the major doctors that I have access to that very few people have access to in the world. I would think that would matter. But if it doesn't at that point, when I know that I've done my best, then I just say, all right, Dad, well, that's, it's unfortunate that you're choosing that route, and I really hope that it works out for you because I love you. But I accept what you need to what you need to do with your body. And that's a way to grant that freedom. And it also forces us to deal with one of our greatest fears, which is our own mortality. I think there's a lot that's going to happen around the fear of death in the coming years. I think we're going to reach a greater relationship with understanding the natural cycle of death, and that people make their choices. And I think we'll have far less resistance. It will become, for better and for worse, but I think mostly for the better, become more normalized that we accept somebody's husband just died, somebody's wife just died. And I don't mean do your best to save them if you can. I mean, it doesn't do us any good to be in a state of trauma by every dramatic story we hear. It's going to tear us down, and we might as well succumb to the illness too, because if we're not fully living and we're in a constant state of anger and shaming people, that's no way to live. There's a death in that too.
Wow.
And so this time that we have together, let us forgive ourselves and let us forgive each other. Let us start having those difficult conversations to say, listen, I know I've pushed you, and I know that pushing has come with a cost. And perhaps you've pushed back at me too, and we've done this to each other, and we've allowed this thing to come between us. But what stands is my love for you. And that's what matters more than anything. So I just want you to know that I'll never agree with what you did, but I accept it. And I love you through it. And that's what I would recommend, because right now we need community and connection more than anything. And it's time that we move into that stage, a kind of a higher consciousness around what's happening, because the greatest, the most nefarious part of this agenda is to divide. So it's destabilize and divide. And so the destabilization has already taken place, and the division has been intense. But we have the power to reconnect, and by reconnecting, we start to then bring stabilization back into our system. So that's what I would recommend to do first.
So far, we've been truly inspired and encouraged to stand up for our rights and what we believe in. Our experts have revealed the truth about how the government has been manipulating us through fear to get us to conform. They've shown us that we shouldn't be scared, and we don't need to be scared to reject harmful practices like the dangerous vaccines and take practical steps to protect ourselves from their threats. Next is Dr. Brian Ardis, a doctor who's passionate about sharing the information that is relevant and true in order to save lives. One of the things he talks about is how hospitals are actually incentivized by the federal government and health agencies to diagnose, test, and vaccinate people for COVID-19. He also shares key information about 2 really important documents that he suggests everyone signs before even needing to go to the hospital for any reason whatsoever, in order to tell hospitals exactly what you will allow when it comes to your treatment. We'll also hear directly from Joshua Yoder, a commercial airline pilot and founding member of usfreedomflyers.org, after he recognized the urgent need for someone to advocate for pilots who have been experiencing devastating consequences from taking the COVID vaccine.
All right, so the very first intention behind anything that I do is trying to bring relevant information that helps preserve the lives of all people around the world. So number one thing, when COVID-19 started, the pandemic was announced into the American public and through the mass media. It became very apparent early on that there was a great threat to the life of anyone who goes into a hospital. It has always been from the beginning, early treatment outside of the hospital is your best bet for beating COVID or any other infection. So this QR code I created as a resource to provide forms, documentation, advocacy for people in hospitals, because a lot of people are being coerced, bullied, shamed, and are scared to death that they're going to die from this COVID-19 respiratory infection. So on this QR code, the reason why I give this is because there's a resources tab for those who set up usernames and passwords on my site. And when you sign into your account or on that site, there's a resources page, and when you click it, when you open it, there's a form called the Medical Directive to Physicians form. Second is a form called Medical Power of Attorney form. And I believe that everyone in America needs to have these 2 forms downloaded, signed, and notarized before you ever think you need to go to a hospital. The hospitals, since the pandemic started in 2020, have now been set up with procedures and protocols that are actually incentivized by our federal government and health agencies. The hospitals are being bought off to follow through on all COVID-19 protocols. They're getting bonuses to diagnose you with COVID-19, test you for COVID-19, treat you for COVID-19, vaccinate you for COVID-19. This is what they're set up to do. You just don't know that. So if you sprained your ankle or you have a massively severe headache and that's what you think you need to go to a hospital for, you need to have 2 forms with you at all times. So please behave like you're in your 3rd trimester of a pregnancy and you believe your water might break at any moment. Please have the medical directive to physicians form. It tells the hospitals what you consent to in the way of treatment for COVID-19, what you believe, what your rationale, what your decisions around the COVID-19 vaccines are, because you don't want them doing that to you without your consent, which they are doing, by the way. So this is why this QR code is here, is to give you relevant information of how to advocate for your loved ones in a hospital, how it is to have forms outlined, signed, and notarized legal documents to protect you and your loved ones from being injured by the things we're going to share with you in this presentation. So that's the only reason why I put this up. My goal is to try to preserve as many lives as possible. Why do you need to be protected? This is why. All right, so that's what the QR code is for, is to give you access to documentation, things that can help improve your life, resources that can help protect you, and then how you can have legal recourse and documentation to protect you with your job that's being threatened with a vaccine mandate. We have medical and religious exemption forms. We've got the hospital forms. All of that is there for you. If you need an advocacy team for people in hospitals, if you go to the Get Help button on the drartistshow.com, it actually has a form that populates when you click Contact Michelle Routen's team. There's a team of advocates that represent all 50 states in America, Canada even now, and medical doctors are on their staff to help you with your ethics committee meetings in hospitals to get them to do what you want them to, other than what they're doing right now per COVID-19 protocols. So all that is on the drartistshow.com. That's why we set that up. And that's all free, by the way. Just go there. They'll set that up. All right, so what are my concerns around the hospitals? Why was it important to me to actually create all of these resources for you? Number one, my job is to try to bring awareness, educate you, and warn you of the things you should be doing, not be doing, so that you can make a better or informed consent decision on behalf of you and your health. Early treatment is best. Do not wait until you're really sick. If you're going to go to the hospital, remember this site. There's forms you should have at home for the rest of your life, as far as I'm concerned, because I don't see an end yet to this onslaught of medical tyranny and political tyranny. Your liberties and lives are being destroyed, being taken advantage of, and it appears that many men and organizations in the world do not care about preserving the lives of adults. Our elderly are being targeted with remdesivir and with the vaccines, and now they're coming after our children.
Our next speaker is Dr. Mark Sherwood. He talks about how using the right strategies can help you overcome coercion that the government has used to get us to conform to taking this COVID vaccine. This is largely rooted in staying true to our religious beliefs and holding them as a shield against the evils of the government.
So you go back and look at this idea of vaccines. It all started when the government got involved and transferred the liability from them, the vaccine companies, to the government. That's when the love of money came in there.
Yeah.
And they became profitable. And Bill Gates said something very powerful that I really would agree with. So don't shout me down now yet till you hear the explanation. He said the best investment he ever made was in vaccines. No risk, high reward. Pretty good deal.
Yeah.
The United States government, Anthony Fauci, are they involved in vaccines? You bet they are. Are they profiting from them? You bet they are. Check the boxes. You will know them by their fruits.
Yeah.
And
Conflict of interest right there.
That's it. That's enough said, right? So we just got to understand that. I encourage people to step up. Use the wisdom of God in making every decision. Make your decision based upon firm convictions, right? Now, we have seen in our world, we've written a ton of religious exemptions, ton of them. So far, they've all been accepted.
Really?
They have, because we've done them a certain way with a certain method. We haven't just printed something off, had somebody sign it. Because we've actually had people call the clinic and say, hey, is Jonathan a part of your church that we wrote a letter for? Yes. I thought you were a clinic. Yes, we're a church too. Pretty simple. It's not hard, but we overcomplicate it. And so we've been really successful with that too. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
So the fact that you are a church, which some would say, well, no, you're a clinic, and you say, well, what is a church? And then even the word church in Greek is ecclesia, which is body. And
Yeah, that's it.
Well, what makes a church? Well, okay, so you pray with your patients, you teach them the scriptures.
Bam.
Okay, yeah.
You get it.
Thank you. This is exactly though what the Bible talks about when it says, "Be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves," because you're being wise in that, but it's a true answer, completely true, and it's in every sense of the word. And anyone that doesn't see that doesn't understand. No. They don't understand truth. They don't actually even understand what's being discussed here, what the whole spiritual process is all about connecting with God. And if you're a part of that, then if you didn't believe in God, then it would be completely false. Mm-hmm. Or teach His word, but you do. So why was it that was more effective for you to say that you were a church versus just a clinic? Because the religious exemption is the premise by which we can do this. Because it's interesting for me, and I think for the audience listening, that because as a doctor, you would think that you could say, okay, I give an exemption, this is a medical exemption, but you're saying that a religious exemption is more powerful right now than a medical exemption. Is that true? Or
yes, that is true.
Why is that?
Because we still have what's called the First Amendment. We have freedom of religion. Now, we can define religion all day long. But let's just say, for example, in this discussion, we're talking about the religion, even though it's not a religion, but we call the relationship with Jesus Christ, believing He's the Son of God that came to this earth, that died for our sin, rose again, and He lives right now so we can have life. And by confessing Him as our Lord and Savior, which I do, believing that He rose from the dead, which I do, I have eternal life. And because of that, I have a freedom based upon the First Amendment to worship Him anytime I want. And that's a freedom given to us by a God-birthed Constitution. So we can claim religious freedom. Now here's the kicker in this, that if you claim religious freedom, and it has to be according to EEOC, and sort of the idea of this freedom of religion concept in First Amendment, we have to believe that we have a sincere, firmly held conviction or religious belief. And when we have this, we can't be discriminated against. We can't be terminated or fired or anything like that. So that's what we're claiming here within this idea of religion. Now, first, my profession may be classified as a naturopathic doctor. We may have a business. We may be authors, movie producers, whatever you want to do. But that's not my profession. My profession is really as a believer. I'm a minister of the gospel. That's my profession. That's what I profess. That's what I speak out of my mouth. That's what I am always first. And within my ways that I make money and make a living and God supports that, I am still a believer. That's the point. And so I am a licensed minister as well. So when I speak with these people and when our staff speak with these people, we actually have a conversation with them. And I ask them this question, Jonathan, I really do. I say, tell me why you believe that you are wanting a religious exemption. And I make them tell me these things. It's just like, I'm not going to write something for somebody that I think is not a sincere belief. I'd be lying, right? So I ask them those questions. When they do, I give them the answers and I write them a letter. We do, with our name on the letter, saying I'm a naturopathic doctor and a licensed minister, and boom, 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 boom. Keep it short, sweet, to the point, and they get approved. Now, the reason that is bulletproof is because we still have the Constitution. Yeah. Is the Constitution being eroded away? Yes. But we still have it, right? We still have it. The Constitution of the United States is still birthed by a higher power, God. Yeah. We know that. Now, the reason it's more powerful is what I just laid out than the medical exemption is this. When you start to say things like, well, Dr. Jonathan, I would like to write me a medical exemption because I'm allergic to the ingredients of the vaccine.
Oh, wow.
Okay, what's in the vaccine?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Shooting a moving target here,
Which ones are you allergic to? And did you get tested for this? Have you had other vaccines before? And what was in those? See all the traps? There's holes all over that. Do you take Do you take ibuprofen? Do you take acetaminophen? Do you take an aspirin? Do you take other medicines? Because what they're going to do is they're going to trap people eventually in the idea that there's ingredient A that you say you're allergic to, but you've been taking ingredient A in this medication ever. And I'll tell you where they're going to go next. Mark my words on this. They're going to put those ingredients in food. And they're going to say, well, do you eat this food? Well, yes. Did you know that it had this in it? And you're going to look like a liar. So that's why we need to understand that the religious exemption, uttering the power of God to provide protection for us, is always going to be superior to the concept of medical exemption. Now, we've written some of them if we've had data that backed it up. But let people always go, if they have that sincere belief, right down the pathway of religious exemption first.
Amazing. And is it largely connected to the aborted fetal cell use, or is that a small part of it? Is it more about the fact that I have a sincerely held religious belief, which is that I don't want to put this in my body because I don't want to put this in my body, and that's what I want to do? And for example, like if I want to believe that God is loving and kind or vindictive and judgmental, like they're my choices, that's my religious view, and I have the freedom to choose that. And without the freedom to choose whatever I believe about God, I cannot really believe anything at all without that. So you can believe false things, true things, you can believe. So which is it that gives us the power? Is it simply that we are saying, I don't want this and therefore I will not have it, and it's because of my faith? Can somebody even that's not religious at all claim a religious exemption, or they just really can't? Because I would argue that somebody that doesn't believe in God, but they do believe in things, they do believe in love, they do believe, shouldn't they not be protected by religious exemption also? So what would you say?
Well, the answer is the latter you said is true. It doesn't really matter what you believe, because the concept and terminology of religion is, that definition is kind of man's best attempt to reach whatever they define as God. Right, so there's people that believe the universe is God. There's people that believe Allah is God. Right. There's people that believe, in Hindu religion, for example. So we can lay this out all day long, but the bottom line is these religions are recognized religions, using that word again, under man's definition, as viable religions that we hold to be true. If you have a conviction in any of these religions, any of them, that you don't believe that in those religions, in those practices of those religions, that within that to choose to not want to put a vaccine in your body or any medication or anything you want to do, period, you can hold that line. That's the intent. Now again, I defined a few moments ago of what I believe that my faith holds. That's me. And I'll put it back on God every time, and I'll say, God didn't want me to do this. Who's going to argue with that?
Sure.
Right? So you could say, that Allah doesn't want me to do this. Now, that's up to you, right? You mentioned, could people claim that and not believe that? I suppose. We can lie. Yes. That's a freedom. You can do that. But we want to stay away, in my strong opinion, from the mention of fetal cells. Not that that's not true, but because somebody might trap you in that. If you give somebody too much information, and you speak too much, it opens up holes. Yep. So we keep our religious exemption letters very short, just like you said. It was brilliantly said. There's no reason to go any deeper than that. It doesn't matter. That's your firm belief, period, end of story. I don't need to explain myself. Yeah. That's what I have. Now, if you start saying, well, this is used in aborted fetal tissues, or contains fetal tissues, or contains graphic oxide, or contains razor blades and graphic oxide that'll cut your cells up, I get all that stuff. But again, what other vaccines have been used to test on these aborted fetal cell lines? Have you taken those? Because see, this wasn't a discussion until recently. And so we're kind of like saying, well, this vaccine today is so much different, there's nothing like it. That's not a true statement. They've always used vaccines to test them on these lines. Yeah. That's how they test, right? Graphene oxide. Check the amount of graphene oxide in your burger and fries, folks.
Yeah, true.
It's like we are getting so distracted from the real issue.
Wow.
right? So I'm dropping what I would consider truth bombs here. I hope people really catch this, because don't get distracted in the controversy. If you get distracted in the controversy, you'll make bad, tactical, emotion, reaction-filled decisions that will cost you something. Everything must be ran through the filter of God. If it doesn't go through the filter, if it doesn't fit in that top of that, leave it alone. Just leave it alone. So you people that have seen us at these reawakening tours we spoke and wherever we are, we're very consistent with our message. And I'm not going to get in the weeds. Why would I get in the weeds? I'm here in the light, man. The weeds bring distraction.
Yeah.
They bring confusion. If you get stuck in the weeds, man, what about the grass?
Yeah.
Weeds are, the Bible talks about weeds.
They get uprooted.
Bam. I don't spend my time in the weeds. I spend my time out here in truth.
Isn't that something?
Right. It's just a different way to look at it. I'm hoping people will be will experience freedom from even listening to our time.
Amazing. I think I really appreciate that. There's some things here that I think are very helpful. One thing that I wanted to mention, if somebody has made an exemption or requested for exemption, they had in their letter that they do not want to put aborted fetal cells in their body or something like that, and they get pinned with this issue where aspirin was tested on fetal cell lines. Good point. You've framed that well. And I think the argument to say back to that, if you're already in this argument, would be to say, and I no longer want to take aspirins because of my now knowledge of this, and that's part of a religious worldview, that you can also change your position. Yes, I've taken them in the past. No, I no longer want to take them. That's just one thought I thought of, because some people are already in this now. They've already used the aborted fetal cell.
Yeah, and I think one thing to add to this, and I think that is a viable answer. I'm going to give you one more that I think is fitting for this, and we've done this. If you've submitted a request for religious exemption, and if there's a question back from that discussion, from an HR, whatever, and the question asked is, do you take aspirin? Here's your answer. This is a religious exemption request, not a medical exemption request, period. See, they'll switch the lingo on you, they'll switch the narrative on you, and they'll try to switch it and merge, confuse, and converge that medical exemption into one. And the more information you give them, what you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. I read that somewhere. No, I used to be in law enforcement. So you have to watch your words carefully. If someone comes back and said, well, what about, do you take this, take this, take this? This is a religious exemption request, not a medical exemption, period. You will set them on their heels every time. That's just wisdom.
That's awesome. Yeah, we stand behind the Constitution and the Constitution of countries that have religious premises. I suppose that people in China may be in a difficult situation there, but nevertheless, these principles are still always the same in essence. I think one of the things that people need to understand is our heritage as to what helped to form the Constitution, and that is the liberty of conscience. So the Dark Ages was really ended by the Protestant Reformation, notably, Napoleon had put the Pope in jail in 1798, and that like ended the Dark Ages per se. But it was really the event of the events of the 1500s and those preceding that, from brilliant and amazing men like John Wycliffe and Jerome and Huss, and then Luther and Calvin. And so when Luther stood before the Diet of Worms and he said before all these dignitaries, I cannot go against my conscience. For a Christian, it is unsafe. This is really the premise by which he stood his ground. This is what really forged this liberty of conscience issue. This is what he was saying. This is my conscience. He said, this is the only ability I have to serve and follow God. This is the only way by which I understand that I can obtain eternal life, because if I can no longer think for myself, I can no longer choose good or evil, and so I can't choose anything. And so I cannot be good, I cannot do good if I cannot choose, because like a robot, for example, can't do good or evil. he can only do that which he's programmed to do. And then naturally, if we're in the hands of wicked people, then all we will, we can do evil by not following our conscience. So we stand by our conscience. And then he said, "So help me God." And he stood in, "Here I stand, I can do no other." And this is the stance that we take. I can't stand anywhere else. I have to listen to God's conviction over my life. I believe I can't take this.
Yeah, there's 2 points to that. What you're describing is called the doctrine of the lesser magistrates. A very good concept. A guy wrote a book named Matthew Torella. I encourage people to get that book. But when you talk about the ability and the rationale for standing up for what you believe, if a law is proclaimed, or an edict is given, or a rule is conferred, or an opinion is generated that conflicts with your own deeply held religious belief, just like you said Luther did, right? Standing up for that is not an option. It's your duty. It's your duty. And this is a big deal. In our campaign, it's interesting you said that. Sure. We have these shirts that says, when tyranny becomes the law, defiance becomes your duty. It's not an option anymore. And we need to be willing to die for those causes. That's what those men did back in 1775 when they signed their name to the King of Britain and said, "You know what? I'm willing to die for this. This is a law that I'm not going to follow anymore because it contradicts God's law," right? So we understand that. The second part of that whole concept, Jonathan, is this idea that socialism and Marxism, right, communism, however you want to lump it in there, is always about taking the choices away from people and putting them in control of dictators to tell you what to do. In other words, you become just robots, which is why in all of those, Christianity or the following of God is always going to be a point of persecution. That's why, the Jews were persecuted. That's why Christians have always been persecuted, because the concept of Christianity or religious choice or faith choice is something that does not stand in agreement with socialism or Marxism. It can't do it. It's two different things. So that becomes a threat. And that's why my wife and I today, and you, as we stand here or sit here and talk about this stuff, we are a threat to the agenda of the United States of America right now, those in charge. Their agenda is to control and overpower and dominate under the guise and intent of, we can feed you, we can clothe you, we can protect you, we can care for you. It's not their job. It's our job.
True.
Self-governance. And so it's a big deal, a big discussion topic, and people need to really wrap their arms around that. And my concern is for the next generation that have been so robotically trained by the computer generation of social media and all this stuff, and get so polar narratized, I call it. They get so stuck in there that they can't seem to think for themselves. The power to think for yourself is the greatest power given to us by God Himself. Yeah. Which I think is just amazing. So we need to wrap our arms around that and always think for yourself.
Beautiful. Isn't that amazing? That's what makes us an expression of the divine, and the beauty of the fact that I have two little boys, and yesterday my wife said, "Do you want Thai food?" And he said, "No, I want dada." And I'm not with him right now, and so like my wife and the friend, they wanted to cry, and the fact that he could say that is what makes that beautiful. If it's that freedom to be able to say what you think, and the fact that he loves me, that I love him, it's a voluntary response. It's not something we have to do. So it's like you have to think about everything beautiful in your life is because you have the choice to think and do these things. And like a young child's, that he can say and think what he chooses to say and think, and that is beautiful, and that's what we strive for.
Indeed. The question that people ask, why and why not? I know we get tired of hearing it, but those are two of the most powerful questions ever. And I think our Father God wants us to ask those questions. We ask Him why not? And that's something that's driven my wife and I, really all of our life. They say, well, you can't do this, it can't be done, why not? Or you say, this is always how it's done, why? So we question the status quo. May people that listen to this video always question the status quo. We can always do better. We can always accomplish the impossible. The unlimited potential of the human experience with the divine empowerment is something that we should hold in great awe and honor to be able to achieve anything.
Mark, why does that move you?
It's God. It's God. People need to understand that God is real. And people that are even watching right now, I just encourage you to, seek Him out. If you don't believe what I'm saying, I really don't care. It's not my point. But in my life, if you say, God, I want you to show me if you're real. I want you to show me if you're true and show me what truth is. He'll show you. And when He does, there is freedom in knowing truth. And I just leave it at that for people just to think upon. My life, my wife's life, we live fearless and hopeful. I don't care if somebody has a fever or a virus. I really don't. If they want a hug, I'm going to give them a hug, and I don't care. I really don't. We haven't looked at this virus as anything other than just a distraction from the truth. I'm just like a gnat. Get out of my way. The real issue is there's people out there that don't know truth. My job on this earth, my wife's job on this earth, is to communicate just what I said to you. That's our whole job. Whether we're naturopathic doctors, whether we're movie makers, authors, or governors, that's our job. And we're going to stay with that line because that's a line that brings great healing to the land.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think the privilege here is that you're helping people to learn how to operate from a place where they cannot be shaken. Mm-hmm. And that's the key. That's what's going to save lives as we move into the future. When we become immovable, then we cannot be forced into situations that compromise our health. And God will open the doors for us. And you see this with people like Desmond Doss, who refused to carry a gun. That was his choice. He was following his conscience. He was a conscientious objector. That's what we do when we choose not to have this. We're a conscientious objector. We're doing that from a point of, we will not take this based on our conscience. And then as he goes into war, 75 men rescued off an escarpment in one night in an area where people were being sawn in half with machine gun bullets. And how is it that one man can rescue this many people in this time? There was a Japanese soldier that said 6 times he had him in his crosshair, and every time he'd pull the trigger, it would jam, and every time he'd take it off him, it would fire. How is it that this man was protected? And these are the things that we need to say, God, you will be my protection. Mm-hmm. And as it looks like the world is falling in, and all of the walls are caving in on us, we say, God, you are my protection. I will trust in you because you are good, and I know that you love me, and you have my best intentions at heart. I trust you. And these are the things that will hold people in these times, even if people have never known how to have faith before or had a broken relationship with their faith and felt that they just didn't feel that connection. We can trust, and we can learn to trust. It's not something that if we haven't nurtured in the past, it doesn't matter. It's about what we do now. And so I appreciate so much of what you shared. Before you leave us, Dr. Sherwood, if you could just mention, how would you list an exemption? What would be a few of the words that you would put in there? Roughly. I mean,
the religious exemption? Yeah, we say, I've discussed this person's situation. I've listened to their concern about this being the temple of God and their faith in God. I believe their story. They appear to be very conscientious. I use that word, conscientious, and aware of what they're saying and aware of the consequences of potentially not taking a vaccine. Therefore, I believe them and their story, and I support their conviction as a licensed minister. We respectfully ask for an exemption from taking the COVID vaccine. Pretty simple.
Awesome, and that there's a kindness in that appeal as well, or it's a respectful appeal because you're appealing to an authority that has been usurped, and yet you still appeal in that authority. It's kind of like Christ when he was standing before governors that were corrupted, yet he would speak in kindness to them and appeal to them and ask them to do that which was right. That's a correct measure to take.
It is, and it's biblical. The way you mentioned the example of Jesus, you also the example of Daniel. Daniel was granted favor with the guard. It wasn't because he was a jerk or a butthead. You show respect for those that are in authority. Even if they don't agree with you and you don't agree with them, you still address them with respect. Because if you don't, that's counterintuitive to the world we walk in. If you want to get favor, you learn to treat people with respect, whether they agree with you or not.
Also, before you go, you're a naturopath, so I really want to ask this. Do you do live blood analysis? Are you seeing anything in people's blood after the vaccine, or not necessarily visibly, and do you see improvements in people's blood before and after you do the protocols that you've mentioned?
Yeah, so we do a lot of the hematology, and we've looked at that, and we personally haven't seen, people that have used our protocols, we haven't seen all these weirdo, neutrophil monocyte numbers get completely and permanently out of line. Now we see people when they get the vaccine and or get infected, we see that in the blood work, clearly, because it's supposed to be, it's an inducement of the immune system. But we haven't seen those stay there over time doing our protocols, right? Now, I've heard people talk about, well, and maybe I'll let my wife talk about this too a little bit, but talk about the clotting factors. Again, there's more than one thing that will create those anomalies to create the tendencies to clot or get those red blood cells all messed up and out of whack. We personally have not seen a consistency with that based upon solely taking a vaccine. And probably that's because we do all these other things with it. So I think that, the totality of the circumstances in each individual are different instead of just a general statement, you take a vaccine, this is going to happen to every person. Again, that won't happen. It's like taking vitamin D, this has happened. No, every person is a synergistic being and all these systems that sort of interconnect, interdependent.
Got it. And it seems like a compounding effect. Like
it is.
The more toxic they are, probably likely the more issues and that
totally.
Kind of thing.
Totally.
Yeah. So like the big key there is empowerment. You put the right things in your body. Know that whatever you've done, the key is the way out is always the same, and the point being that, or always the same in that everyone is to eat clean, healthy, drink water, exercise. Everyone is to do these things. There's no exceptions. There's certainly the exceptions at times could be if your body is severely injured, then there's certain exercises that maybe you can't do immediately. Right. But everyone should do exercise. What type and how much is the body would tell you, and physicians such as yourself can advise. So I think that's supremely helpful, and so these are the steps that people can take, and they can empower themselves and know that the tools are readily available, and that when we do these things, we can trust that our body will heal and complete the recovery.
Well said. Agreed.
During this episode, we heard experts from different fields talk about what they've done to help people stand up for their rights and protect them from the harmful plans that Big Pharma and the government have carried out throughout the pandemic. We gained practical knowledge on what we can do to take a stand against coercion, how to stay true to our beliefs, and how to help others gain insight into the truth too. We've all been placed on Earth to work together to protect one another from harm. Our experts have shown us that we can stand up to fear and fight for the protection and conservation of humanity. If we all play our part in standing up against the evil plan behind the COVID pandemic, we have the power to derail this plan completely and restore balance to the world. Hi, it's Jonathan. I'm so glad that you joined me, and I'm so glad that we got to experience this life-changing journey together. Now, we're wrapping everything up. This episode is now over. This is a very quick message to remind you that we're closing down our program completely now that this episode is over. So don't miss this. Take advantage of this while you can. If you want all the free gifts, the over $2,500 of free gifts that come inside of the gold package, the $1,500, $1,591 of free gifts that we've just added in with the answer to autoimmune disease, brain healing breakthrough, and heal vaccine injury recovery and immune protocol. These are tools that will absolutely change your life. Amid all the other amazing gifts, the 60 full-length interviews. We've just added 10 full-length interviews to your program. Don't miss out on those. They're fantastic. The audios, the transcripts, the books printed out, delivered to your door, the DVDs, the 9 episodes, the 9 bonus episodes, episode 10, 11, and 12. It just keeps going. The 16 special reports that have not been released before, that you have not seen, with our amazing experts, all detailed exactly what you get inside of these great reports, and so much more here on this page. Don't miss out on this. This is absolutely life-changing, and I want you to have access to all of this. So all you have to do is click the button or the banners here on this page. That will get you started immediately, and I look forward to seeing you inside of this program.